My name's Thomas, K4SWL, and I run a website called QRPer.com, which focuses on field radio, and the majority of our field reports and things we talk about have to do with low power radio. So, um, which for me, QRP really means something like 5 watts or less for CW and digital modes, and 10 watts or less for single sideband. But I'm not a purist with any of that. I think QRP is kind of a state of mind. So I know a lot of people that call 20 watts QRP or anything under 100 watts QRP, and that's fine with me. I think you make it your own. But how did I get into all this stuff? Well, I was first licensed in 1997. And actually, at that time, my wife was doing her master's degree at Ohio University in Athens, Ohio. And I needed a job during that time, and there weren't a lot around, but I got to work in a Radio Shack. And a fellow walked in one day and he was looking through the components at the back of the store. And one of the things you learn working at a Radio Shack, since all those jobs are sort of, they were on commission as salespeople, none of the salespeople would ever help people going to the back of the store or the components because they cost very little. So there was very little commission with them. But I liked going back and helping people because I wasn't very commission motivated. And a fella came in one day, his name was Mike, and I was helping him look for some components. And I said, "What are you building?" And he mentioned that he was an amateur radio operator. And I said, it's funny because I'm actually studying to get my license right now. I'm just maybe a month or two away from taking my exam. And he said, "Oh my goodness." He said, "We have an event this weekend. Why don't you come out and join us or just take a peek?" And I thought, okay. And he told me it was at the Athens County Fairgrounds there in Athens, Ohio. So I went out there that Saturday, and it was an event he told me was called FYBO, or Freeze Your Butt Off. And I thought, what kind of event is this? And I went out there, and Mike was there. That's him right there, K8RAT. And Mike came out and said hi, and he introduced me to his friend Eric, WD8RIF. And this is actually shots from that very day, back in 1997. And Eric and Mike became lifelong friends. I'm in communication with them all the time. And what really impressed me was the radio that Eric was messing with, who at the time was a QRP Labs or Index Labs QRP Plus transceiver. And up to this point, so first of all, I'd never gone to any kind of amateur radio event. This was, when the internet was still kind of in its infancy a bit. So most of what I knew about amateur radio came from the likes of QST or CQ, some of those magazines. And my vision of an amateur radio station really had to do more with something that was a 100-watt radio, a big desktop radio that required a big power supply and all those things. And to see a radio that was like the size of a little cube really blew my mind. And to see him operating CW, which I'd never seen in real life, and I was watching him rack up contacts from all over the country. And by the way, during Freeze Your Butt Off, you get sort of multipliers for how low the temperature is. And that day it was super windy and it was super cold. So he was scoring a lot of points. And man, I was hooked. I was hooked for a lot of different reasons. For one thing, it had to do with field radio. And I realized that I really, really love playing radio in the field. I feel like that's where radios belong, and it's where I belong. So I love being in the field. And I love the idea of making contacts with QRP power or very low power. So those two things really resonated with me. And then another thing I really like is packing. And I think a lot of people think, really packing? But it's true. I love packing. And previous life, lived in Europe and traveled a whole bunch. And I got packing down to a science for me, because I would have to kind of on very short notices sometimes hop in a plane, fly to Germany, France, Spain, wherever. And I would be there for several days. And I learned very early on that I did not like checking in luggage. So with my pack, I became very organized I knew where things would go in the pack. I knew how to pack them. and I knew if something was missing, and I could pack my bag to leave on a trip in probably 10 minutes or less and know that I had everything in there that I'd need for an extended stay when I would go traveling. And one bag travel is something that's really stuck with me ever since then. And you'll see how this has an impact on field radio here in a second. But for me, one bag travel means like today, I live in Asheville, North Carolina. And up until fairly recently, basically the only type of aircraft that serviced our airport were smaller ones like Canada regional jets and things like that. MD 88s and things, smaller aircraft that don't have a lot of cabin capacity for luggage. And if you take a roller, any type of rolling suitcase into one of those, they make you gate check it. And I don't even like gate checking my luggage because there have been times my flights have been so tight during a layover that waiting for them to bring the luggage out from the gate was just too much for me. I like having a little more control over it. So I'm willing to go pretty darn small with my luggage if I need to. In fact, I think I took this photo once when I was flying to Philadelphia for a week. I needed to do a presentation at a conference and visit with some friends, and I had some other things, other travels going on. And I booked a flight that would allow me to have one personal carry-on, and I'd have to pay more for a full-size carry-on. So I decided that I would stick with the personal carry-on. And this is everything. I took a picture of everything I packed in my personal carry-on that time for 1 week of travel with a presentation. And my whole computer system was that iPad that you see on the left there. And I made sure I didn't have anything in there I didn't need. My goal was to come back and say, I used everything in here that I needed to use. And I packed it in this bag. And this bag is the black bag at the back there. And that's what it looked like when I packed it. And so that met all their requirements for personal carry-on, and it lasted me for 1 week. And I absolutely love the freedom of having all of my gear in something that's so small that I can take with me. And that kind of relayed over into the world of amateur radio, to be honest. So when I was packing, when I pack my gear, that's what I like to do. But early on in the world of amateur radio, when I go play radio in the field, I didn't go out enough. There weren't enough excuses for me to go take my radio to the field. And I didn't have a science. I didn't have it down to a science yet. And so I go out there, and sometimes even with Eric and Mike when I was visiting in Ohio. And I remember so many times where we would just everything was kind of packed into cars, and you'd pull it out and set it up and spend probably 30 minutes trying to untangle a wire antenna and all of that. And I thought there's got to be a better way. And but I never, again, besides field day and some QRP events, I didn't have a really good excuse for going out regularly until I learned about these two programs, Parks on the Air and Summits on the Air. Actually, technically, it was before this. It was during the National Parks on the Air program during 2016, where I discovered just how fun it was to go out on almost a daily basis and play radio in the field. And then that was only a 1 year event. So after it went away and then Parks on the Air came around, I learned about that. And of course, there was always Worldwide Flora and Fauna and some other programs, Islands on the Air and some other things. But POTA was just very accessible. And I started doing POTA activations, I believe, in 2019 and really loved it. I started doing SOTA activations, I believe, in 2021, maybe. I can't remember the year, but I loved it. Parks and summits, being outdoors, playing radios, I absolutely loved it. And I do have a fair amount of radio gear that I've collected over the years, and I like trying it all in the field. I like taking any radio I have out to the field, and I try to rotate them around fairly regularly. And the radios, I feel like the ones that I stick with, I love the different character of different radios, some of the characteristics for field operating. But they all tend to be smaller QRP radios for the most part. And ones I found very field portable so that I can pack them and enjoy them. And in fact, this particular slide right here shows the Elecraft KX3 hooked up to an AX1 antenna, which is a base-loaded 4-foot vertical that attaches to the side of the radio. And I use that all the time when I have a very short period of time to be on the air, or I'm going to a park where maybe I'm not allowed to deploy larger antennas. I love using really compromised antennas at times. I find it really fun. But I don't really care. If I don't have a picnic table, I'll sit on the ground. I'll sit up wherever I want to. But the key component to all of this is having a really good field gear set inside of a pack or a case or something that I can take with me and know I have everything with me. Radios have gotten so small even since when I first started doing parks on the air, national parks on the air. This is my Elecraft KH1 that's packed in a Pelican M40 case, which is a little small case, and it stays in my backpack that I take with me everywhere so that when anytime I get an opportunity, I can just hop outside, open it up, and do a little pedestrian portable operating. And I really love doing that. I've used this radio in a wide variety of locations on the coast. I've used it on the um, I guess you'd say the lowest part of North Carolina along the coast, like right at sea level. And I've used it on our highest summit here, Mount Mitchell, and everything in between. I really do love using it. But what we'll talk about right now are some of what I consider some of the components of a complete kit. And let's talk first of all about the basics of the field kit. And a lot of these is pretty much review for anyone other than people. I mean, if you've ever taken radio to the field before, you kind of know all this stuff, but let's go over it anyway because it's kind of fun. First of all, you need a transceiver. And people ask me all the time, I'm kind of a point guy for, hey, which radio should I get? And my answer to that is I've got a lot of questions for you first, because I think to recommend a radio or recommend an antenna, you really need a solid understanding of where you operate, how you like to operate, what mode you operate, how much power you want, that sort of thing. And so it's difficult for me to recommend because I kind of see all those things tied into each other. Some people want QRP, some people want 100 watts. And I also use 100-watt radios. I'll turn them down to QRP levels most of the time, but people have different needs. And I just say find a radio for the field that you enjoy using, one that's a lot of fun for you, and that fits the type of field operating that you do. And don't worry so much about performance. If you're getting a pretty modern transceiver, it's going to perform well enough to do what you want to do. But the main thing is to have a dedicated field radio. I think everybody these days, when I first started in 1997, that QRP Labs radio that was in that photo that Eric had was probably a $600 or $700 radio, maybe more than that. Now you can with 2025 money today, you can buy a multi-mode HF transceiver that's a QRP transceiver for under $200, especially if you're willing to build a kit. You can do it. Back then, you couldn't do that. So there's so many options out there that there's no reason you shouldn't have a dedicated radio for work so that you're not taking your home transceiver and packing it up each time you want to go to the field. I have a reader who actually designs penny whistles or like little tin whistles, and he does it for Celtic music and that sort of thing. And he really kindly sent me one that pulls apart in 3 pieces, and it packs up in this little tiny pocket-sized kit, so you can take that whistle with you anywhere. And I mentioned to him like, wow, I just can't believe how this packs away so small, this little penny whistle. And he said, yeah, but don't do that. Leave it all put together so that you can pick up that whistle at any point in time and just start playing it. There's not even the barrier of having to put it together. It's just there and it's ready to go. And that's how I feel about field radio too. If you have a field kit already packed up, ready to go, when an opportunity arises, there's just no reason you can't just hop out to the field really quickly and play radio. And there's a kit for everyone to fit any kind of radio that you're interested in taking to the field. So it doesn't matter the shape or size. Use what you've got or get something that you think is going to be fun to use in the field. Of course, you're going to need an antenna and you may need a means of supporting it. So for a lot of people, especially out west, that maybe live in rocky areas or in desert areas where you don't have maybe access to as many trees, you need something self-supporting like a telescoping pole with maybe a wire antenna or a self-supporting vertical antenna, whatever you like using and whatever you find is easy to deploy, that's what you should go with. For me, I live in Western North Carolina where we are blessed with trees everywhere. And there's not a park or a summit I go to that I can't usually find something that I can hang an antenna on. Not all summits have them, but a lot of our summits still have trees on them. They may not be very tall, but I can still use them. So I use wire antennas a whole lot, and I use trees as supports because I'm allowed to do that even in our parks. There's not a park I've been to that they won't allow me to do that when I ask. And of course, firing in shape size, and you just get one that number one meets the power requirement of your transceiver. You got to be really careful of that. I've known plenty of people that use 100-watt radios, and they'll go out and buy an antenna that's only rated for say 50-watt CW, but they run 100-watt CW and they start melting things. You can get small antennas like the Pactenna from my buddy George, KJ6VU. He runs Pactenna, and his antennas are really small, but they actually have they can handle a fair amount of wattage because it's got a big old toroid on there. But some antennas have smaller toroids, which is not a problem if you're running QRP. And then for me, a really essential part of the field kit is a way to get my line into a tree, and that is always going to be with an arborist throw line. A lot of people suggest potato guns and drones and all kinds of things, but these are just so quick and easy to use. Redeploy 100,000 times. I've never had one get caught in a tree. They're just really wonderful. There's a reason why arborists use these to put lines in trees is because they're effective. And you buy one of these and you won't need to buy another one for years after you do it. And it's a lot of fun. Actually, it's actually part of the fun of me going out to the field is trying to get the throw line where I want it to in a tree. That's one of the fun things I find. Of course, you're going to need a power source in your kit, and we are so lucky to have so many cool battery chemistries that we can use now. My favorite are lithium iron phosphate. They're not quite as energy dense and small like lipo batteries and some other things, but I like the fact that they're stable. They have a really, really, really long shelf life, and you can cycle them many, many, many times. I have a large one, a 15 amp hour one that I use for my QRO radios. So like my anywhere from 20 to 100-watt radios, that's what I like to use for them. But for most of my other QRP radios, I can get away with using a 3 amp hour lithium iron phosphate battery at 12 volts. I do have a 9-volt one as well. And I find that they power almost all of my QRP transceivers that maybe only need like, say, somewhere between 100 to maybe 250 milliwatts in receive, and pretty modest as well with transmitting. One of my radios, actually, the MTR3B, a mountain topper, I'm able to use a rechargeable 9-volt battery that's like the type of 9-volt battery you put, say, in a smoke detector. It's so tiny. That radio is so stingy with amperage or with its current needs that that little battery, when it's charged up, will last me for sometimes like 2, maybe even 3 SOTA activations on that little tiny battery. So the reason I mention all these components is because you really need to size them up to what you're using. If I'm using that mountain topper, I don't need a big battery for it. I can get away with a really tiny battery. If I'm using a larger radio, a QRO radio, then I'm going to need a bigger battery and maybe beefier cables for that radio, and that's an important part of the kit. Of course, you need some kind of input device, a key, a mic, maybe a keyboard if you're doing digital modes. You got to think about all those things because I know a lot of people that put together kits and send me pictures of them and say, "Hey, look at my kit." And I'm like, "Oh man, that looks great. Hey, where's your mic or where's your key?" And that, and they don't think about that part because it's like separate from the radio. But you want to make sure in your field kit that you're accommodating those things because they're a meaningful part of it. You can't really interact with the radio unless you've got some of those. Also, a means of logging so that you can take track, keep track of all the stations that you work. I am a paper and pencil or pen guy myself. I used to do both on paper and on my phone at the same time when I do activations. I don't do that anymore. I just found that I enjoy the activation more if I'm just writing it on paper and then later transcribe my logs. I just think I'm a little more accurate with that too than typing on a phone. So those are the main things. You may need also an optional, like a cable, an antenna cable or a cable assembly or an antenna tuner. It depends on what you're doing, but most of us would want a cable assembly. If you connect your antenna to the radio and you're not doing it directly to the radio, which some antennas will do, or antenna tuner. And I'm a big believer that everybody should have an antenna tuner, even if they don't plan to use it, because ATUs are almost like first aid kits for your radio system, in that if you break your antenna or something goes wrong or you can't deploy it properly, a lot of times an ATU will at least make your transceiver happy so that when you are activating or just making contacts, that you're at least your transceiver is seeing a really good impedance balance, and so it's not or low impedance, so it's not stressing it too much. And they have saved my bacon a couple of times when I've had problems go on in the field. But basically, the two types of field kits I like are a complete self-contained kit, and that's what we'll talk about here in a sec. Kit that in that bag, pack, case, backpack, whatever it is, you have everything, literally everything you need in order to play radio in the field. A modular kit, on the other hand, is one that you can put together quickly. So a modular kit is one where, and I have to use these quite a bit because I've got a lot of radios, a lot of antennas, and a part of the thing I do on my YouTube channel and on QRP is I rotate them out a lot, and I can't have a dedicated kit for every single radio and every antenna that I have. That would get a little crazy, and I'd end up having to take stuff out of one kit to put in another when I would go to the field to rotate them out. So a modular kit's just one where you compartmentalize different parts. Like your radio, I have like kits where in a modular system where I've got the radio, then I have a little pouch that has all of my antenna supplies, and then a pouch that has my battery and cables that I need, and a pouch that has my keys or my microphones. And then when I'm ready to go to the field, I can just throw them all together and hit the field and play radio. But I'd like to talk about my favorite thing, which is a fully self-contained field radio kit. And these are what makes going to the radio or going to the field so easy with your radio. My very first one, this is the kit that I used to use for National Parks on the Air, and it all fit in this. This is a company in Montana called Red Ox, and they call this bag the Micromanager, and I like really nice bags and packs. That's one of my things, and I bought this one because it's padded and it really holds radio gear very nicely, and I have my whole Elecraft KX2 kit with everything I need to do a park activation in that small bag. So that bag stays in the car, and anytime I want to do an activation, it's ready to go. And that was my first fully self-contained field kit for doing park activating back in 2016. I have a lot of other kits. They're self-contained, some of them really small. This is one in a little Tom Ben pouch, like an EDC pouch. And it's one that I put my Mountain Topper MTR3B in. One of mine, I will sometimes rotate out the radios in this kit, but that kit has the key, it has earphones, it has cable assembly, the radio, the battery, the logging stuff, a pencil, and the logging book. And then you can't see it in this photo, but in the back, I actually have a little throw line as well with a throw weight. So I can deploy everything and hop on the air and make my contacts. This is another version of that same thing. This is the Mountain Topper that I put in a Pelican 1060 case, which is a great size Pelican case. Pelican cases are great if you are concerned about water intrusion ever, or if or crushing a radio or something. If you're concerned about those things, that is Pelican's a great answer to that because they're pretty much crush proof. If I'm going through a river or a creek or something, which I don't have to do very often, but if I trip and fall into it, that radio is going to be fine. I may not be, but the radio will be fine. And then this is what it all looks like when it's in that kit. I actually have a full throw line in there with a throw weight and antenna. Everything's in there. I even have a little tiny SWR meter in there with two batteries. So I go for a long time. Here's another field kit based around the QCX Mini. Also will fit the QRP Labs QMX or any of those small form factor radios. Everything I need is in that little kit. Um, so I like building them out this way because you can actually fit a lot when you start to think through what you want to put in a field kit and make it all self-contained. You What you do first is you build out the kit with what you want. You put it in the pouch or pack or whatever. Then you take it outside and you fully deploy it and hop on the air. If you're able to do that, then you know you got all the stuff in there. Don't ever make a kit and then test it by actually going out to a park or especially a summit and then finding that, oh, I left the battery out or something. If you test it fully at home before you go out, then you'll know if it has everything in it. This particular kit right here, this is one of the great things about having a fully self-contained kit. This one fits in a pouch made by a company in Virginia called Blue Ridge Overland Gear, and it has a lot of Velcro on it, and it's designed to be put in a pouch that fits behind your headrest of your car. And that's what I did with this. So that's a full HF kit with a 5-watt radio on the headrest of my car and a space in the car that is otherwise not used for anything, and it's not in the way. I forget it's even there. It doesn't show up, so it's not like something. It's not like leaving a valuable in your car seat or something to attract, someone bad. They just don't even think to look there, and it kind of blends in with the car. But it's always there, so I can always at any point just pull it out, and I'm good to go. Got my
Yep.
battery, got everything I need. So now we'll talk about my field kit golden rules to kind of round all this out. Um, I have some rules that I believe in with field kits, and I think everybody should note these. I'm sure there are more, but these are the ones that I kind of really take to heart. Number one is do not borrow from one kit to feed another. So if you have a fully self-contained field kit, you may have something in there like an adapter or a cable assembly or a battery or something or a key or a microphone that you may be really tempted to pull out of that kit and use it in another kit or use in your house. Like maybe you get a new radio that you put in your shack and you think, oh, I need an SO239 to BNC adapter, and I've got one in my field kit here. Don't grab it from that. You never want to do it because if you do, you'll forget it's in there. You'll go to the field and you'll be missing it. It's such an important rule. It's actually my second rule too. Don't pull from one kit to feed another. And I was showing you like this kit for the pouch. If I pulled out any one of those components, any of them, even the pencil, I could be in a position where I couldn't really operate the radio the way I want to. Um, I have gone to the field before early on, and I'll admit that I couldn't marry a BNC to a PL259 in the field because I had pulled out an SO239 to BNC connector. And sometimes you can kind of jury rig things, to work for you. That's a tough one in the field if you don't have any other accessories with you, is to marry those two connectors together. It's not easy to do. And so another one is I did early on, I took a small, like 2-foot cable assembly out and forgot to replace it. And then when I got to the field, I was using a non-resonant antenna and I didn't have a way to connect it, my ATU, this manual ATU, to my radio. So that's only happened to me a couple of times, and that's why I've got those two first rules there of golden rules. Number three, you want to use your pack's organization so that every item in it has a dedicated spot. And I pull out this one again of my KX2. Now this is the Elecraft pack. It's actually a low pro pack that they started using when they introduced the KX2 because it fits things so nicely. In there, I've got my radio, I have a microphone, I have a key, I have my antenna, I even have cables for a for the amplifier, the 100-watt amplifier, if I wanted to use it. It's there. I've got an extra power cable to connect it up to an external battery. I've got earphones. I've got an assortment of connectors in there as well, and adapters that I may need. Only thing missing out of there really is my throw line, which is in a separate little pouch that I take with it. But each thing has its place in there. And the reason why that's important is if I'm packing up, I'm going to notice visually if something's missing. So I'll notice if my power cord's not in there or my key or something. It's going to be really conspicuous. And then when I go to pack up, I know where everything goes just almost from muscle memory. But no, rule number 4 is no matter how compact you're trying to make your kit, and especially if you do summits on the air where you plan to do a lot of hiking, you learn really quickly that you want to make your kit really compact and really lightweight because you're going to be carrying it sometimes for miles to get to a summit, and you're going to feel it. Every ounce of that, you're going to start feeling it. So that what you usually want to do is make it as compact as possible and not have anything extraneous, but you still need some important spares. So I think the ones that are worth considering are the weak link ones. That actually I said PL259 to BNC, but an SO239 to BNC connector or adapter, which a lot of us use. I don't know if you've ever bought one from a Hamfest or online or whatever, but they're just, the quality is not incredible. I have yet to find a really high quality one of those adapters. And at least 2 or maybe 3 times since I've been doing parks on the air and summits on the air, I've had them fall apart in the field. So I keep an extra one with me. So I can use it. You may need a fuse if you've got fused cables or a battery distribution panel or a DC distribution panel. Maybe a spare cable assembly, especially if you're not using a really high quality cable assembly. I tend to buy ABR Industries cable assemblies, which are just about, they're amazing, super high quality. But I also make my own cable assemblies, and I don't trust mine as much as I do ABRs. So if I've got one of my own, I'll usually carry like maybe an extra with me. Though I've never had one of mine fail, I just always like to, it can just ruin your activation if you're not careful. Sometimes you may want to consider like having an extra battery if you have an automatic antenna tuner that has replaceable batteries like the Elecraft T1. Some have rechargeable batteries inside, and you want to make sure you've got those charged, or you may want to take an extra power bank or something like that to keep it charged. You do need, like, I would at least keep a pencil and some and pen for logging and a little notepad, even if you only plan to use a computer in the field or a tablet or a phone. I would still take a pencil and paper, because if your phone runs out of power or something goes wrong, you can still log very easily without having to use a stick on dirt in the ground to do that. Also, maybe alligators, cable ties, a little bit of tape, some wire if you want to. You don't have to do all these, but just maybe try to do the ones you feel are the weakest links. Always have a plan to protect your rig from rain and water. So one of the cheapest ways to do this is to just get some really good thick polyethylene bags or polypropylene bags. And I mean, like some of the thicker millimeter ones are really nice to have. And you can store your stuff in that while they're in your pack, or just keep them nearby, and you can protect things like your battery and your radio in case you're in a deluge or just, a lot of rain or water intrusion or something. Those are very handy to keep, and they're very inexpensive. The biggest rule here, and one I'm really big into taking away, is be so familiar with your kit that you could effectively pack it in the dark. And I mean that. Like, what I do with my field kits is after I put them together and after I've tested them to make sure I actually have everything in them by doing a little test run at my house, I then try to remember all the components and where they are in that field kit. And I've had this happen to me before. I don't think it was this exact same setup, but I was at a park, and it was in the fall, and they had just changed their hours to close a little earlier because the sun was going down a little earlier. and I was having a gangbusters POTA activation and was not paying attention to the time. And one of the park staff came up, and I know them, and they came up and they're like, "Hey, Thomas, we're going to be closing the gates here in about 10 minutes." And I looked around, and it was dark already. I'd just been plugging away, and my eyes had adjusted to it. So I said, okay. And I called QRT and hopped off really quickly because I did not want to make them late at all. Didn't want them to have to wait on me. And I didn't even want to go back to my car and grab my headlamp. I just wanted to pack it up. But because I knew where everything was, I knew where everything went in my kit, I was able to pack the whole thing up without missing anything. And I think that's a really good thing to do. It just makes you that much more familiar with your kit. Another thing is to use a quality pack. This is an area where I'm willing to pay a lot more money for a backpack than most people are. I tend to buy packs that are made here in North America, either in the US or Canada. I kind of like buying things domestically if I can, just to kind of support, manufacturers are making cool things here. I'm not against anything imported or anything like that, but our pack world is one where we have some really good ones out there. But you're going to be paying for it because you're going to be paying North American labor prices and materials prices. But this is my GoRuck GR1 pack, which is one of my workhorses. It's a great rucksack, and I've used it for soda activations, POTA activations, and everything. And it's got great capacity. I also travel with it as a one bag travel bag because that will count as a personal carry-on, and it holds quite a lot. This is its little brother called the Bullet Ruck, and I use it to sometimes for soda activations and things where I'm not having to hike very far and I don't need to take a lot of kit with me. That's a really nice one, and it's really small and compact. I have one that's more of a sort of I guess you'd say like a tactical pack made by a company called Spec Ops out of Texas, and it'll hold quite a lot. And they are designed for military use, but I can strap a lot of things to the side of it, and it has MOLLE webbing on it, so I can even attach packs to the out or pouches to the outside. And I really like it. It's pretty compact, and it feels good when you're wearing it. And is a great or great pack, super rugged to take to the field. And then I also have packs that are designed more for long hikes, like this pack, where you need to think about things like your suspension, because if you're going to carry the pack for really long distance, and even when I'm doing summit activations, the radio kit is usually not the heavy part of my pack. It's usually the water I'm taking with me and sometimes food and other supplies. Those are the things that really weigh down the pack. So having a really good suspension with a hip belt or something that takes some of that weight off of your shoulders is really important. This is a full-blown Mystery Ranch hiking pack that I use as well for longer soda hikes and for camping and stuff. But some of the considerations when you're looking at a pack, it doesn't not have to be, one of the packs like I get. But I am a pack geek. I do believe in durability and quality. The reason I'm willing to pay a lot for a pack is because I have never had one of these packs ever fail on me in the field. Not any of these. I have been with people who've gotten just little packs off Amazon for like 20 bucks that look really nice, but the zipper comes off in the field. And I don't know if you've ever had a backpack that had a zipper failure in the field, but if you've got all your radio gear in it and you can't close it up, it is not comfortable taking that pack back down the mountain. So I believe that good durable quality is really important. You have to pay attention to the weight and size. Some packs weigh a lot themselves, and you may not want that if you're doing soda activations. If you're doing POTA activations where you're not going to go away from your car very far, it's not a problem at all. So look for comfort, look for padding sometimes. Like if it's a little small pack, like some of the ones I was showing earlier, you may want to see if it's got padded walls or a padded floor to protect the gear. Good organization and easy opening, nice weather resistance, and maybe even MOLLE or some other kind of attachments for external pouches and things. The golden rule number 8, and we're getting really close to the end of this now, is prepare and plan for your environment. And this is super important. Even as a park activator, where you may not be far from your car, you may be in a place with infrastructure like visitor centers and park staff and things, but especially if you're doing summit activations and things where you go on long hikes on your own. that is super important that you really plan for your environment, not just think about the radio components in your kit and your field kit. This came from National Geographic, and it was an article talking about why day hikers are the most vulnerable people in survival situations. They're the ones that emergency crews have to go out and find, are the day hikers, because they go out, they're confident, they're not going very far, but then something happens. Maybe the weather changes, or they miscalculated the time the sun was going to set, or there's an event where, it may be in the fall where trees are falling, or leaves are falling off of the trees, and it hides the path to go back home, and they get confused and they lose their path. Things like that happen. And if you get lost, and stranded in the woods, you really do need to have a few supplies with you. And these things are small, they're not expensive, but they make a lot of sense. Number one is a high visibility vest. If you're a dedicated park activator and you like to activate as much stuff as you can, a lot of them here in North America, at least, are, especially in the States, are game lands. And game lands require, a lot of them, that you have high visibility clothing or something that you're wearing. And so you really need this anyway to take with you. But if you were to be injured or hurt and you're in the woods, this is going to show up a lot more nicely than, say, camouflage stuff. If you're trying to attract attention from a helicopter or other hikers or whatever, so keep that with you. This one that I have, I bought, I think, on Amazon. It's super, super lightweight, and it packs away, and it's easy to put on. Also, you need some first aid kits, and you want them to be designed for what you're doing. I am a really big believer in first aid kits. Each one of my packs has its own first aid kit. And I like these. I like the ones that are pre-made sometimes, like this Adventure Medical Kits. I really like the one on the left, and that's designed for almost any kind of hiking incident you could be in. But you don't want it to be mystery meat. You need to open it up, look at it, look at all the components, check the dates on them, make sure that you know when some of the medications, are going to expire and things, and know what's in there. Don't just buy it and throw it in your pack and say, okay, I got a first aid kit now. You need to be thinking about it. Also, you may want some other small survival tools. And this one pack I found one time on sale, and it actually has quite a lot of stuff, including a flint and a mirror and whistles and compasses and fire starters. It has a lot of stuff in that little pack, and you can find those. Just know what's in them, open them up, look at them, and have a mental inventory of them. Also, I have a little emergency bivy. That's the thing that's at the bottom there in the red pack, and a space blanket. I hope that I never have to use those, but they're a lot nicer than not having them if the weather changes on you and you get stuck in the woods for some reason. And these things don't take up a lot of space. You can throw them in I can put them in my smallest of packs. Also, you need a little bit of food sometimes with you as well. And especially water is one of those things you definitely have to have enough of, and maybe even a filter for filtering water. I also believe that if you do long hikes on your own, or even with people, you really need to have some kind of means of communicating if you don't have radio access or mobile phone access. I tend to use a Garmin InReach. I think it costs me $12 or $13 a month for the service for this. I look at it as an insurance for my wife. If she need to get in touch with me, or if something happens, she just knows that I have an SOS button I can press on that. I can also send her a text message, and hey, you can even use these to tell your friend to spot you if you really need to. But they're really good. Much like a first aid kit, take this not only for you, but for other people you may be with or encounter, because this may help them out. Each time, in fact, I've used my first aid kit in the field, it's been for other people. Even though I'm super accident prone myself, I've never actually had to use one for myself during a summit outing, but I have had to give out things for other people. This I could do a whole other presentation on. Everybody should have a rechargeable headlamp, and you should have it in every one of your packs, every one of your field kits, and every one of your cars. These are the most amazing thing ever made. They can make the difference of seeing something and not seeing something. I think even just using them, doing an activation at night, it can help illuminate everything, and it frees up your hands. So if you have to pack up your gear in the middle of the night, you're not holding a flashlight while you're trying to get an antenna out of a tree. You just put it on your head, and you don't have to do anything. It frees up your hands. Also, if you're going hiking and it gets dark too quickly, and you get stuck out there, this will mean that you can see your path to get back home. So big, big, big fan of these. I like to get the USB rechargeable ones, and I get the ones that are higher quality that get really good reviews. And I'll pay a bit to have these because I don't want something that's going to fail in the field, and I want something that's going to have some good longevity with the battery while I'm out there. In fact, the one I keep in my main soda pack that I use for long hikes is a really, really, really beefy one that I can have on the highest power or light setting for hours at a time. So I like to overdo that if possible. Some other items worth considering are like a packable waterproof jacket. You may want a field chair and a knee board. Now, these actually, if you've got small radios, are really cool. I have knee boards. One of my readers made this one for me specifically for my KX1. He designed it for that. But I also have just a generic one that fits a lot of my radios, like my KX2, my mountain toppers. And if you chair with you when you go to the field, like a small hiking chair, I like this Helinox chair. All of that stuff fits in my backpack really easily. They don't weigh a lot, but it means that when you go to the field, you can pull out this chair and you can set it up, and it weighs so very little. You just don't even notice it in your pack. And now you've got a place to sit. And then with the knee board, you put it on your knee and you put your radio on it, and you have your entire station on your knee if you need to. This is with my Elecraft KX2 and my AX2 antenna. And this particular activation I will never forget. I was on the summit of Black Balsam here in Western North Carolina using my most compromised antenna, which is that one, the AX2. It's only 20 meters and it's a 4-foot whip antenna with a little coil at the base. I was running 5 watts, and that day I worked Java Island, Indonesia with that particular setup. Just all my entire station on my knee. So with the knee board and everything, you don't need any other infrastructure. You don't need a picnic table. You're not going to be sitting on a rock. It's actually a pretty comfortable way to know that you're going to be happy in the field and playing for a while. Also, take some sunscreen if you need it, and bug spray, hiking poles. I think that they're a very important part of my kit are my hiking poles. I think they saved my knees. I'm sure they've saved me at least 2 trips to the ER. They're wonderful. USB battery packs, those are mostly so that if you're running GPS and things like that on your phone, if you're out in the middle of nowhere and you don't have a strong cell phone signal, you will actually run down your phone battery a lot faster. So carry one of those with you so that you can recharge your battery. I always have one in my pack. Also toilet paper and a little shovel because, hey, nature can call when you're out in the middle of nowhere and you want to make sure you're doing the right thing. And then while nature's calling, you want to protect yourself with bear spray if you live around here because we have a lot of black bears. They're not terribly aggressive or anything, but if you happen upon a black bear and you get between a mom and its cub, or you scare it, or it's not expecting you, it does not hurt to have some kind of bear deterrent, or any other kind of wildlife deterrent, depending on where you live. But that is pretty much it, actually. Those are all the components I like to look for and build into a radio kit. I could make this presentation 5 hours long if I wanted to, because I love to take a really deep dive in this. But I hope maybe you've got a few questions for me, and I'll try to stop sharing this now. And I'll turn on my video again, and hopefully it won't break up too badly.
There you are in all your glory. Okay, well, thank you very much, Thomas. That was a good one. You did a good job there. I'll edit that little spot out where we had to do some video changing. Okay.
Sorry about that.
Oh, it's no problem. What do? You do that on your own? Okay. Do we have any hands up or anything in chat? Barry, how we doing in the chat?
Jim KN4UJW wants a recommendation for a push-up pole. The KM4 HTK suggestion is not manufactured anymore.
Okay, yeah, you're talking about just a push-up, like a telescoping pole for hanging a wire on or something?
I would imagine that's what it is. Whatever the KM4 HTK suggestion was, isn't made anymore.
Yeah, so the one that I have been using, and I hope this is not the same one he's talking about, is what's it called? A POTA 20, I think is the name of it. And it's a carbon fiber pole that I think Gigaparts was selling for a while. It was introduced at Hamvention last year, and I've got it sitting back here somewhere, but I don't want to stop to get it right now. But it is super lightweight, super compact. And my buddy Mike Rodeberg, he has actually made 3D printed stakes that you can put in the bottom of it and just kind of plop it in the ground, and works brilliantly as a great pole for, like I say, a random wire antenna. I've even used, you could use a 40-meter in-fed half wave or something on it. It would just be kind of low to the ground. But those are my favorites. I know a lot of soda activators that use 31-foot carbon fiber poles and some really crazy stuff, and I watch them put it up, and it really amazes me. I've never gotten the science down of putting up a super tall pole where you have to guy it down in 3 places. But if you do that enough, you get really good at it, because I know a lot of people that can put those up very quickly. Yeah, it's the POTA 20. Mm-hmm. Is the pole I was talking about.
That's everything in chat.
Okay. Anthony, is that your hand up?
Yes, I got my hand up. Great talk, Thomas. One of my
Thank you.
rules for packing, and you brought it up also, is I never want the shack and the pack to mix with each other.
Yes.
So, in addition to not sharing between kits, the worst thing you can do is bring that temporary pack by the shack, and then they get mixed with each other. So,
Yep.
my rule is set everything up, including even the furniture I'm taking, in a separate spot. I can be in the same room, but I have to be on the other side of the room from the shack, and then operate everything and then pack it up, and I know that I got it with me. So yeah, I agree with that 100%. That's one of the biggest things I've learned over the years. Now, even though I do that, I walked out to the car one time and left one of my modules, my coax bag and my extension cord bag, on the floor in the garage. We drove to Erie, Pennsylvania, where I operated for a POTA and a lighthouse, and I hooked my antenna up, got ready to hook up my Go box, and didn't have any coax. So I ended up the only wire I had with me was the leads from my multimeter. So I had an 18-inch wire from the antenna to the Go box. So I had to operate a POTA prone on the air, laying on the ground next to the antenna to operate, because I couldn't get the radio any further away from it.
Yeah, that is, I think it's just such an important point that you don't cross-contaminate from your shack and your field kit, or from field kit to field kit. It will always mess you up if you do that. And I think I think about it a whole lot, because I've got a lot of field kits I've put together, and it's easy when especially if I go to the field and I'm like, oh, I would like to use this radio that's in a field kit already with this antenna, as opposed to the one that's in the field kit, because I want to try out this other antenna. And what I end up doing in those cases is I take the entire other field kit and then take the antenna, but I'm not going to place them out. I just won't do that, because inevitably something will, I'll leave something out, something will stay out of there. So yeah, that's a really good point.
Jeff wants to know if there are any recommendations for small fused power distribution block.
Yes. If you don't mind putting it together as a kit, my very favorite, and this is kind of a shameless plug in a way, is for the Ham Radio Workbench DC distribution block. And I don't know if I can grab it. Yeah, actually, I can grab it really quickly. This is, well, I've got a few here. So this is the new block that they make. And George and those guys put it together after the first block they made that I purchased back in 2019 at Hambench, and it was also a kit, and this was the first one that they made. It was super popular. Everybody wanted it. It's really small. It's got, let's see, you have an input, and then you have 4 more things that you can hook up to it. And I find that in the field, it's rare that I need any more than that. The new one has 6, and it's actually rated for, like you can put a lot, you can hook up a lot of stuff to this. You can have a lot of amperage going through this. It's really beefy. And I really like this one a lot because it's super portable. It's really small. It's really high quality. These are sold through DigiKey. It's an easy build, even if you've never made kits before, or solder mini kits. This is super easy to build, and works really well. There are some other ones, and I don't have one here to show you right now. You can buy cheaper ones on eBay that a guy makes that probably only cost like $25, but they're pretty fragile, I found. And so I like something beefier in that. I actually have this old these aren't made anymore, but Saratoga, which is like a metal enclosure one, sort of like the rig runner type DC distribution blocks, but they're just kind of big and chunky for the field compared to like this little panel, the Ham Radio Workbench one. And I think we actually have these in stock right now. It's hard to keep them in stock because people want to buy them up, but I think this is great. Plus, you get to build it, which makes it that much more fun.
I put the link in the chat.
And George and Mark and all the rest of the guys at the Ham Radio Workbench are going to give me extra bonus points for bringing that up. I can tell you this: don't let perfection stand in the way of going out and playing radio in the field. Use what you got. You do not need to have an expensive antenna, an expensive radio, an expensive pack. You don't have to have any of that to go out and play radio in the field. I think that you have to think about quality more when you're doing long hikes and things like that for summits on the air, just because you don't want your gear to fail when you're really, really, really far away from everything. And there's nothing worse than hiking for 11 miles, maybe round trip, only to find out that you were missing what you needed when you get to the summit. Um, I did have one of the reasons I'm like a really big believer in keeping a headlamp stored in your pack is I once went to the summit of Standing Indian, which is near Franklin, North Carolina. Really, really beautiful summit. And I went there with two hikers that are not SOTA people. I just met them at the campground. These two women that were great. They were a lot of fun to go hiking with that day. And we kind of got off track and we took a longer branch to loop back over to the summit. Ended up doing an 11-mile round trip summit hike that day. Well, because we had the extra probably 2 or 3 miles tacked on to it, it meant that we were on the summit around 2:30 in the afternoon, grabbing our lunch. Then I did a really, really quick soda activation, and then we were heading back down into town. And this was in the fall when leaves were falling off the trees. The path wasn't always super clear where it was, and then the sun was going down a lot earlier. And that having that headlamp with me meant that like we could illuminate the path going down. And so, um, like I said, you have to think about things a little bit more if you're being kind of adventurous about where you're going. If you're going to a park, you can keep a lot of extra supplies in your car or your truck or whatever that's nearby.
Hey, Anthony, go ahead.
I just wanted to mention if you're just getting started with POTA and things like that, and you're worried you're not going to be able to make enough contacts, do it on a contest day. You'll make them in just a few minutes, and that takes all the pressure right off. So go out during a busy day, and you'll get your contacts really fast.
Yeah. Contest days also always kind of pay attention to the spots and see where people are operating before you go out if you got a chance. And you'll find out the bands that are usually healthier. The past few weeks, the bands have been really wonky. And I went out 2 days ago and did an activation, and I could tell based on how much QSB there was that the bands weren't doing very well. But I found that 20 meters was fairly healthy, and that's where I ended up staying to do most of my activation. Also, if you want to do an activation on a weekend, weekends are always busier. A lot more people chasing you, a lot more activators out there for either Parks on the Air or Summits on the Air. Yeah, so you're right. Those are the best ways to maximize. And also make sure that, especially if you're doing single sideband or something, it doesn't really matter the mode, make sure without a doubt that you are being spotted. If you're being spotted where you are, it increases your chances of that completing an activation by orders of magnitude because people know where to look for you.
Thank you, Bill. AC7SR. You want to take it?
Thank you. Thank you. Great presentation. Enjoyed it.
Thank you, Bill.
Question about you started out in 96 and you walked into this, freeze your something off.
Yeah.
Those guys were doing CW. Is that how you got hooked into CW? Or did you plan on that from the very start?
That is a really good question. I never had CW in mind other than passing my novice exam. Back then, they still required CW. This is in actually 97. The early part of 97 is like, I think, February or March. And CW was still required for, I think, 5 words a minute. And so I had been studying like the Gordon West tapes that I purchased at Radio Shack to make it past that 5 word per minute test. But seeing Mike and Eric run CW, and they're pretty much CW guys. I mean, in fact, they are just CW guys. I hardly ever hear them operate anything else unless they're chasing a station. And it really whetted my appetite for it. But after I got my license, I did single sideband for quite a few years and very, very little CW. It wasn't until I think 2008 or 2007 when my daughters were born that I started taking up CW. I was spending more time at home, being kind of a stay-at-home dad there for about a year. And so I listened to the tapes again. And then as I just started feeling comfortable that I knew all of my letters and numbers and some punctuation, I called my buddy Mike, K at RAT, and I was like, Mike, let's hop on the air before I change my mind. And so we started doing rag chews then for months, where we would meet up in the morning and we'd do a rag chew. And he worked with me no matter what speed I was doing. And by the end of that, I was probably doing 13 words a minute very comfortably in a rag chew. And then there was a lull where I wasn't doing it. But what got me doing CW in Parks on the Air was the ability to have the reverse beacon network spot me. That was the most tempting thing. And so I started doing it. And once I started doing CW activations, I never went back. And I'll still love voice, but for activating, I just find CW, I just love the radios and hopping on the air that way.
You said a reverse, what was that part?
The reverse beacon network. So when you're operating Parks on the Air, Summits on the Air, Islands on the Air, anything on the air, or you're just doing random contacts, the reverse beacon networks, a network of receivers that decode CW that they pick up on the air, and they do it kind of in real time, and they report it through a network, sort of like PSK Reporter or something. And the really cool thing about it is programs like Parks on the Air and Summits on the Air, and I think Worldwide Flora and Fauna, and probably a lot of others, they will grab information from the reverse beacon network. So with Parks on the Air and Summits on the Air, if I announce that I'm going to a park and I kind of give a time frame saying it's going to be sometime between 3 in the afternoon and 5 in the afternoon that I'm going to be on the air, and I tell which park or summit I'm going to, when I hop on the air, all I have to do most days is just start calling CQ with my call sign. And by the time I've called CQ twice, the reverse beacon network, or the RBN, has picked me up and spotted me automatically. So I don't have to have internet or anything to spot myself, which is one of the great things about the reverse beacon network for that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you very much. This has been very informative. Okay, Barry, how are we doing in chat?
We're good in the chat. Anthony putting the link to the RBN in the chat.
I'll send the link to Thomas's QRP.com article on using the reverse beacon network for POTA.
Okay.
Oh, nice. Thank you. Yeah, and if you're interested, the one really cool thing about QRP is it's really kind of a community of people, a lot of contributors. It's not just me on that website. And we have a whole section I think it's under the resources tab on our page, that has field radio kits, and it's called the Field Radio Kit Gallery. And all kinds of radios are in there, and people kind of submit what they pack in their kit, and they show pictures and they have links, and I really enjoy doing that. For me, it's almost like sort of like the same thrill my wife gets when she goes on like a home tour or something. Like, here's how you could, arrange things in your house. I look at it as like, oh, here's how I could do my pack. Here's what here's how I could pack things. Here's some really cool pieces of gear I haven't used before that may help out. So that there's just a huge amount of information there. And of course, on the website, we also have a ton of, very regularly every week, we have multiple field reports from people all over the world, really, that submit their field reports. And it's kind of fun to see how they play radio.
Okay, Mike in California, take it away.
Yeah, so I just have a funny story about the reverse beacon network. I was activating a park yesterday, and it spotted myself on single sideband. And was not being heard. And I was trying a new antenna because I like to do that in the field because I'm crazy that way. And so I decided, well, I'll go over and just send out a quick CQ on CW, not saying POTA or anything else, just to see where that went. And the reverse beacon network, if it sees you already doing POTA and you send out a CQ, will
Yeah.
assume that you are trying to spot and will respot you even though you do not want contact. So
That's right.
you need to make sure you know what the reverse beacon network is doing with any traffic you send, because it tries to be smart about it and may second guess you in ways that you do not intend.
Likewise, in the early days, or earlier days of POTA, I remember this must have been 2019 or 2020, somewhere in there. I remember on one of the forums, there was a guy, and the POTA community at that point was orders of magnitude smaller, way, 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 way smaller, to the point that I remember like our whole goal when we went out was just try to get 10 contacts. And it tended to be the same people that would hunt you because it was just a small community, but it's also really close knit. And I remember in that community, in one of the discussion boards, there was a guy that was absolutely like livid because he said, hey, everybody stop trying to hunt me. I'm camping at this park, and every time I get ready to hop on to like rag chew with somebody, everybody starts hunting me, and it's annoying. Well, what he had done was he went into the POTA system and announced that he would be at the park from like a Thursday evening to a Sunday morning, like a blanket announcement for that whole time. Anytime you do that, that means the POTA website's going to be looking at the reverse beacon network for any mention of your call sign. And when it does that, it's going to spot you at that park each and every time, wherever you are, even if you're just doing a rag chew or whatever. So you have to be careful. You're right. It's a double-edged sword, the reverse beacon network.
Interesting. I learned a lot tonight. Thank you.
I just posted the RATPAC presentation we had last year on SODOMOT, which is a
Yes.
method for POTA spotting also that you might find interesting. Again, if you're new to RATPAC tonight, I know we have some new people with us. ratpac.us, you can see all the 500 plus videos that are available, and Thomas's video will be posted in the next couple days on there.
Thank you. Thank you. Mike, K6DN, California, go ahead.
Yeah, so you mentioned Sodomate, a new feature of between the apps on phones and the ability of phones now to send messages via satellite is that even if you do not have cellular connectivity, some of these apps will use the satellite texting feature to text a spot through. So, if you're someplace where you want to spot via your phone, look into that. I have not tried it yet, but it seems to work from people that have used it. So you may be able to spot in places you did not think you could spot.
That's absolutely right. In fact, so Sodomate itself, I'm glad you guys have that in your catalog there, is a really, really fascinating system that allows you to really spot yourself no matter where you are with your phone, just using like, acoustically coupling it with your phone, on your radio, just putting them close together and playing the tones on the FT8 frequencies, and it works amazingly well. There are also now people make little devices that you can hook onto your radio. Like I've got one I haven't tested yet. I just bought it I bought it sometime around, I think, when Hurricane Helene hit here, and that's the reason why I got way off track of testing it, because that kind of threw me off. But I plug it into my KX2, and I can Bluetooth like to the radio and use Sodomate directly from the radio, so it's even a better connection to it. So there are a lot and you're right. I think iPhone 14s, 15s, and 16s all allow you to do satellite. I did use that satellite texting during Hurricane Helene. It definitely works. And the system makes it very easy for you to find the satellite to make the communications with it too. It's very intuitive. And that's something to keep in mind if you're going on really long hikes, or if you're about to invest in a new phone. That's going to be a lot better than not having some kind of satellite capabilities, just getting one of those so at least you can text via satellite.
Wow, good information. Good information. Anybody else?
You're good in chat.
Well, it's been a great presentation. appreciate you coming on board and sharing with us here.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
Anthony, you always have something to add.
Well, I do have something. For those of you that are going to be going to Dayton, Thomas will be in Dayton, so you can track him down, talk his ear off there too. Also, I'll be at Flea Market Spot 9904, and Marty, N6VI, one of the other RATPAC group, will be there. So 2 of the RATPAC people will be in Dayton. So if you want to come up and complain or anything like that, or talk about RATPAC, please feel free to stop by.
Yes,
Yeah, and I'll be at the primarily at the Ham Radio Workbench / Pactena / Halibut Electronics booth at Hamvention. I think in Building 3. I can't remember our table numbers now, but it's maybe 3011. I think maybe one of them. But we're off in a corner in that building, and it'd be fun to meet you. And also, I'll be at 4 Days in May. The whole day, that whole Thursday, plus all of the evenings, I'll be there as well.
well, unless there's something more, I'm going to pull the plug here, folks. It's been a great presentation. Look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. And thanks again, Thomas. Great job.
No, my pleasure. Thank you so much.